issues at these radio stations, do want to, and one of the radio stations, my station over there in Jessup, uh, Helena did us wrong. She tore the tower down completely. So we're off the air until we can erect a 200-foot tower of music courtesy of WTLD FM, no, WSLT 88.5. But until we can erect a 200-foot tower to put our antenna back on, we're going to be off the air in Jessup, Georgia for the first time in more than 20 years. But into each life some rain must fall. Welcome, 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 Dr. Jones. Anna Davis was, of course, the longtime general manager down at WTLD. And Tanya, how you doing? My gal Friday, Henrietta Hill. Glad for all of you to be in the number one more time. And at Gilbert, God bless you. How you doing, sweetheart? So we're glad again that we are here and on the air and trying to get things done. Welcome to WSLT 88.5, where he is alive, and we're glad that that's working. For those of you who can see me, you may notice that I have discoloration in my face, particularly around the lines of my beard and my mustache and stuff like that. And we don't know exactly what's causing it. Probably this new medication I'm taking in connection, probably, maybe even with my CPAP, but I don't know. But I don't use a big old CPAP like that, though. But nevertheless, I'm getting light skin around my face. I'm not hurting. There's no pain involved. If y'all don't mind me becoming a red bone, I guess we'll be all right. So we just thank God for it. Hey, Sister Taylor, God bless you. And I'm going to be talking on a few subjects this evening. Let me see if I can give you, tell it like it is. One of the reasons I do it is to give people realistic perspectives of events that, so when you read or you hear, you'll at least have a bit more of a picture in your mind of what's really going on. And so, um, as I'm looking at this thing today, I want people to, in terms of what's going on in, hey Monica, amen, in terms of what's going on um, in terms of what's going on in, hey Monica, in Israel, what's going on and what it what it indicates. Before we get to the actual fighting or bombing back and forth between the parties, let me explain to you something about a couple of facts that people, if you don't, if you don't know, you kind of you kind of would have the wrong impression. For instance, first thing I want to tell you, Israel is a very small nation. Israel is a very small nation. For a nation, Israel is a very small nation. Israel is from north to south about 230, 240 miles. It's roughly the equivalent of, it might be 260, but it's roughly either to from here to Atlanta or a little bit further. That's the whole country. Now think in terms of America being from here to California, but we're talking about the distance inside one state. It is a little smaller in land than the state of New Jersey. Think about New Jersey, if you know anything about the map, compared to the rest of these large states: Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Missouri, Texas, California. So even if Israel was a state in the United States, it would be one of our smaller states, one of the smallest states. That's the first thing. It is at its widest space from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. You're looking at about 85 miles, a little bit, maybe about from here to Swainsboro, Vidalia. Not even as far as from here to Augusta. Small nation. On top of that, the total population is about 14, 15 million people. 14 or 15 million people. But about half of them are Palestinians. One of the reasons they won't give Palestinians parity with them, the Palestinians aren't allowed to vote in the elections. They're in the nation, but they're not allowed to participate in the democratic elections. Even the ones who are not in the West Bank or in Gaza, the ones who are mixed in among the Israelites, the Israelis, they're not allowed to vote with the Jewish government where they live and where some of them have lived for generations. They don't get to become Jewish citizens or citizens of Israel. That's the first thing. The second thing is there are only about 7 or 8 million Jews, only about 7 or 8 million Jewish people in the nation of Israel. Okay? Iraq, on the other hand, the people who are shooting back and forth with them now, who shot missiles at them the other night, Iraq is more than 20 times the size of Israel. Iraq would be basically the southeastern United States. You know what? Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, maybe Mississippi. By comparison, 20 or more, maybe even 30 times the land mass of Israel. Remember I said that there are about 7 to 8 million Jewish people. There are 90 million Iraqis. 90 million Iraqis. So why would the Jews in Israel, the Israelis, feel like they are able to exchange rocket fire and missiles with Iraq, which is a power now in the region? They're just short of having nuclear weapons. Mm-hmm. That's right, Annette. You can check these numbers. You go on Wikipedia, go on Google. You can find out the things I'm saying are just plain facts. 7 to 8 million Israelis, 90 million Iranians. Iran is huge. Besides that, Israel doesn't get along with the rest of the nations around them. They've now breached and invaded the southern part of Lebanon. Monica says, can you explain what I read today about November 7th I'm hearing something bad will happen on that day against the Jews and anyone from the Middle East. I don't know anything about that, Monica. I just don't. I wish I could tell you more, but I haven't heard what might happen. But I will say this: the 7th of October will be the not the 7th of November, but 7th of October will be the year's anniversary from the event where the Hamas went over to a music festival over in southern Israel and killed a lot of people and kidnapped some folk and gave Israel the good excuse, rightfully so, to then take military action against them. Now, in my opinion, they've gone way too far. In my opinion, they've gone way too far. So we these things are moving along. But let me continue. So 8 million, 7, 8 million Jewish people in Israel. Egypt wants to be a neutral arbiter between the Arabic nations surrounding Israel and Israel. Jordan about the same. Syria is opposed to Israel. Lebanon is opposed to Israel. Iran is opposed to Israel. And Iraq is opposed to Israel. Now you heard all those nations that I named. Collectively, you're probably talking 200 million people and more military people um, from other nations that are not directly on this border, like Yemen and other places that. And then there are groups who are not national groups, like Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis. And I know some of these you might not be familiar with, but they are definitely hostile to Israel, and to some degree not always without cause. And that asked, what do they want? Authority and power? In my opinion, with my experience, even in the region, I've been to Israel, I've been to Jordan, I've met with Palestinians when I was in Israel. I talked to many Israelis, and of course I have many people in America who are Jewish that are personal friends, having some authority, but not necessarily elected officials, but of course having opinions. The bottom line is, in my opinion, again, that which raises its ugly heads on a regular basis: racism. I believe that Netanyahu, the president, well, the prime minister of Israel, is doing everything he can do to kill all the Palestinians, and all he needed was a reason. Even if you were saying, everybody always says that Israel has an absolute right to defend itself. Defending itself, defending yourself, has to or should be measured in terms of the threat. Defending yourselves. Um, when someone tells me they need all types of weaponry to defend their home, and I find out that they have a shotgun, two or three pistols, a couple of hunting rifles, AK-47, and 20,000 rounds of ammunition. That's not defending your household. You have now gotten to the point where you are equipped for war. Israel is not at this point just defending its borders. Israel has gone over into other borders. Israel has Israel told the Palestinians to go to the south of Gaza. Gaza is in an area in the Bible called the Negev. It's the most uninhabitable portion of Israel. These are things you wouldn't know if you hadn't been there or are unaware of some of the biblical truths. The word Negev means simply a hot, dry place. So the 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 the, 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 the Palestinians was already living in the most inhospitable areas of Israel. Secondly, prior to their invasion of the music festival last year, the people who were in the Gaza Strip were there, and Israel had their fingers on the switch that could give them lights, and as a result of needing electrical power for pumps for water, also they controlled water, both essential utilities. Well, when they were getting along, they would let them have maybe 12 hours of light a day, 12 hours of power. And when they weren't getting along with them, they'd only have 8. And Israel had its finger on the switch. Again, this is tell it like it is, and we try to be as fair as possible, and as informative as possible. Further, Israel cannot beat the nations around them. Israel cannot beat in a war Iraq, Iran, Syria, Lebanon. They can't. They can't beat them. They could not beat all those folks, except for the fact that they have an ally called the United States. And so the question would then be, why is it that of all the nations of the world, the nation that is not a part of NATO, that the United States will defend their borders and their people with their power, might, money, armament? Why Israel? Principally because, and this is me telling it like I believe it is, because the Jewish community in America controls much of the monetary interests of a nation, of our nation. It is in their best interest. They have politicians in their pockets. They control much of the media. They control who gets what, when, where, and how stories are told. So it's an extraordinarily powerful lobby. The Israeli lobby is extremely powerful. They actually function at the head of the principal monetary interests of the United States. Now, you can use your own research, but if you do a little bit of research, you'll realize that almost every director or chairman of the Federal Reserve in your lifetime has been Jewish. Alan Greenspan, Paul Volcker, Janet Yellen, Mr. Powell now. I'm just saying. You can't. That many back to back, that many of one ethnicity back to back. So Israel is emboldened to strike out at its enemies because right across its shoulder is the full faith and credit of the United States of America. And those who have their fingers on the treasury. Just bottom lines. Bottom lines. And so now, you need to understand the game that's being played in Israel. Netanyahu has a very thin majority in the Knesset. That's their Congress. That's their legislative body, the Knesset. The Prime Minister is not elected by a democratic vote of the people. The Prime Minister in Israel, as well as the Prime Minister in England even, the Parliament is like the Knesset. And the elected officials, the people who've been elected, then from among themselves elect the Prime Minister. Okay? That's England and in Israel. And Netanyahu has a thin margin. But he knows, as most people who've ever been in leadership and government, and they, under their rules, if they get a vote to start an election, it's not an every 4-year thing. Okay? If the parliament ever gets to a point where they said, let's hold a certain number, said, we want to hold elections now, then their elections will take place 6 weeks from the time of that statement. They don't run for office no 2 or 3 years like we do over here, and then stay in office 4 years. And so Netanyahu can they can call a vote of no confidence and call for parliamentary elections, have an election, and he could be out of there. Except for this, and he knows this as most people do. Nations do not change leaders while they're at war. So he doesn't care who all he got to fight. Since his margin is slim, in order to stay in power, he keeps picking fights. Now he's invaded South Lebanon. He's even hit targets up near Beirut, which is the capital of Lebanon, and that's not southern Lebanon, by the way. But he've hit targets all the way to the outskirts of Beirut. Now you say, well, Pastor Smalley defending themselves. Them going over and shooting into and sending troops at this point, they've sent some troops over into Lebanon, is no difference than Putin sending troops into Ukraine. You've crossed the border of a sovereign nation. That, by definition, is an act of war. Now, I may very well get criticized because you can't say anything that's not super pro-Israeli. You got to be on the Israelite side, no matter what they do. Well, I'm never going to be on anybody's side, no matter what they do. I'm not going to be on my children's side, no matter what they do. I was raised that right is right and wrong is wrong. And as we're looking at this, we want to make sure that, particularly this season, I'm going to go to another subject, but I wanted you all to get a picture of what's going on in Israel, because what's going on in Israel, what's going on in the Near East right now, what's going on right now can affect us dramatically. What's going on right now can have our sons and daughters dying in desert countries. They did already in Iraq and in Afghanistan. What's going on right now? You say, well, that ain't got nothing to do with me. If you went and bought some gas today, it has something to do with you. Because Iran could put mines in the Strait of Hormuz and choke off the world's oil supply. Did you hear what I just said? They're situated, Iran is situated with one side of the nation over a place called the Strait of Hormuz. And they could choke off the oil supply, the largest portion of the oil supply, to the world. Facts. Now, Iran only sells about 3 to 4% of the oil that's sold in the world. So them being put out of the oil business will affect things. But if they decide to stop that oil from coming through the strait, and the strait is it's a sliver of water between two larger bodies of water. That's what a strait is. Just to make sure. And yes, it does affect us. It'll affect our children. It'll affect our soldiers, whether they're your family or not. They're America's treasure. And the other thing is, another subject, is the lies. I have not figured out what goes on. I guess these people might be getting paid. I guess I'm hoping they're getting paid. I'm hoping they're getting something. People like Candace Owens and different ones who get on Facebook, Reels, TikTok, or whatever, and do everything in their power to undermine Vice President Kamala Harris. And I'm thinking in my mind, she's not really black. and a scream from the back door of my brain say, well, so what? That's the first thing. Amen. Thanks. You're welcome, Annette. The first thing is my mind screams, so what? She's not just black, never have been just black. Her mother's obviously a full-blooded East Indian. I mean, you just ain't gonna make her be black. Black, just black. But she chose the culture. She obviously chose the culture. She was born, I think, in California. When she says her mother knew about their first house, she lived for a long time in Canada. Okay, before coming back to the United States. And her father was a economist, taught at the university. Mother was some type of scientist, I think, might have been a chemist or something. Very smart, PhD level people. But obviously, she could have gone to any school. She obviously had grades to go anywhere, as well as brains to go anywhere. But at some point in time, she chose to go to Howard University. And at some point in time, she decided that she would embrace her blackness. And for those who don't understand me when I say this, go sit in the corner a little while and think hard, and I'll see if it'll get to you. Being black is more than just the color of your skin or the DNA in your bloodstream. There are many people whose skins are as black as mine and have a matching DNA track who I consider culturally not to be black. Clarence Thomas is as dark as I am, but I would never say he's a black man. Now he's something, but he's obviously socially and psychologically something other than black. Now y'all take your time and name what you wanna. I'm just saying that a few decades ago, a gentleman came to my house, this house that I'm in right now. He was a writer from the Washington Times, and he'd heard that I had been speaking on WSOK about Clarence Thomas. He came and interviewed me, and I said to him that the difficulty with Justice Thomas is that he suffers from a pathological hatred of his own people. That means he's actually sick. And that's a fact. Anybody who consistently goes against, not just on most things, but on everything, goes against the interests of African Americans, when it's as dark as he is, there's something wrong inside his head. There's something wrong in his mind. He's ill. And then, when it comes to Vice President Harris, I was going to talk about the lies that they could tell on, but forget that. Here's what gets me. She has to explain that. This is said over and over. We need to know who she is. She needs to explain to the public who she is. People don't know who she really is. Let me see if I can answer this. Yes, sir, boss. I'm on my podcast. I'll call you when I get off. But that's my friend, Pastor Van Well. We did his anniversary, his pastoral anniversary this week. They let me preach, I think Wednesday night. But they keep saying people really need to know her. People need to know what she stands for. You know, those are questions that you could keep asking your whole life. Somebody could say Sheila Small's been married to Leonard Small for 50 years, but she don't really know him. Leonard's been married to Sheila 50 years, but she don't really. Those people over at that church, they don't really know him. Been pastor 40 years. So you can always just keep putting that little piece of doubt in there. So let's reverse the question. What policies are Donald Trump promoting this campaign? What concrete legislative agenda is he proposing? Are we? Well, at least at least he was lying the last time and said, "I'm gonna build a wall, and Mexico's gonna pay for it." He didn't build a wall, and the little bit he did build, Mexico didn't pay for it. And so let's you don't need if she answers a hair off on a question. Oh no, she's lied. She da da da. He lied every sentence, every other sentence, doing an entire hour and a half, 2 hour speech. Just lie, 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 lie. But what's his agenda? Why would the majority, a vast majority of white folk in America, because that's how he gets elected, he takes a vast amount of white folk, why would they still be voting for a man who has been convicted, who was charged with 80 some felonies, who's been convicted of 34 of them, who's been charged with fraud and found guilty by the state of New York, and sued by that state for $460 some million, who was found to have sexually assaulted a woman who sued him for the sexual assault and defamation, and he owes her 80 some million, and who now still has 60 some charges that are pending. I just want you to get an idea. But every little inchy binchy thing that they think that Kamala may have misstated or misinterpreted, oh, they all over it like a cheap suit from the community. Yes, that's right. And the bad part about it is we do that. Now, make sure you understand. We're down to a binary choice. I've got friends who say, well, I don't like this about her, and I don't like that about her. Some of them are politicians. and they make these statements. And I'm saying, if you're a leader and you're running around making these negative statements about Kamala Harris, and people listen to you and either don't vote or vote for Donald Trump, who has no best interest of the black people in mind, we as a people, I know we got some white folks on here, but we as a people, watch this, are so forgetful that it scares me. A lady said to me, well, when Trump was president, they gave us money. They did. In December, after he lost the election, he'd made a promise before the election, before the election was over, made a promises in October that he was going to give a certain amount of money to everybody as a result of COVID relief. And so everybody got $600 in December, all the taxpayers. But it was not until Biden took office that those payments in lieu of working of $600 a week for some people, that $1,400 lump sum for all taxpayers, all that took place under Biden. You got $600 from Trump under his administration. And in your memory, you think you got all of that money, every bit that you ever got from the government as a result of COVID, you think you got it all from him. That's extraordinary. Go back and look at the dates of the COVID relief funds. Go back and look at it. I'm not guessing. But this is what we do, we forget. We're about to have an election. Voting's about to start, early ballots are going out. The last chance to register to vote in these elections will be on Monday. That's it. Anybody who's not registered to vote by Monday will not be able to vote for either Trump or Harris. So if you got your drunk cousin Rufus, if you got a clergy member who think they're too religious to vote, if you got somebody who just lays in your house, they're sucking up your air and your groceries, and they're 17, 18 years old, they'll be 18 before November the 7th, take those people and get them registered to vote. Make sure they vote. Because if Trump wins, you think it was a circus those first 4 years. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. He will turn Putin loose on Ukraine. He'll cut off the spigot. Because as the commander-in-chief, he can, as the chief executive officer of the United States, he can decide not to send the money and not to send the weapons. The president, remember now, he's the chief executive of the United States. He's in charge of the executive branch, but he's also the commander-in-chief, which means the military can't fire a bullet if he says don't, and they could waste them all if he says do. These are the facts. You're going to put this man back in charge. You're going to put the man in charge who wanted to overthrow the nation. You're going to put the man in charge who has all these charges and convictions. So why are they putting him in charge? I'm going to take it back to the common denominator with what's going on in Israel. Putin is a racist against the Palestinians, against Arabic people. Trump is a racist. And when 75 million of our fellow citizens voted for Donald John Trump, they knew and understood that he was a racist. Even my friends who voted for him knew and understood that Donald John Trump is and has been and will be a racist. You can't get around it. Now, Georgia. What's going on in Georgia? Whenever you hear them talking about the laws in for voting being changed, about 300 or 400 laws were changed after the 2020 election. With Donald Trump saying all this, in all the red states, they changed all the laws. They just start passing legislation to make it where they can control the outcome. For the most part, most of the red states, it won't make a difference because they was going to vote for Trump anyway. But then you got a couple of states. North Carolina is one of them. But Georgia is a pivotal. They're always talking about Philadelphia, but they talk about Philadelphia being essential based on this number of votes. But they would have already extrapolated that Trump would have had to have won North Carolina. He would have had to have won Georgia. If he loses either North Carolina or Georgia, he has a very, very steep hill to climb to try to get to the number of votes necessary. But Georgia State Legislature put a hook in it, and they've been going back and forth. They were in court this week. They had hearings this week about it. The Georgia State Legislature, at the end of the elections in 2020, did an extraordinary thing. For all of my life, and I'm 74 years old, the Secretary of State for the state of Georgia has run the elections. It's all been run under the office of the Secretary of State. When they had the controversy at the end of the last presidential election, and Ossoff and Warnock won statewide, and Biden carried Georgia. The state legislature of Georgia basically said we got to come up with a way that either we're going to win, the Republicans are going to win, or we're going to be able to hold back our electoral college votes. That's really bottom line what this is about. So they took it out of the Secretary of State's office and formed an election commission. Okay? That the state legislature could appoint 3 people to. And they appointed 3 people, all Republicans, 2 of them MAGA Republicans. Gonna do anything they can to have either Trump win Georgia or him not lose Georgia, in the sense that they're going to hang up election counting process to the extent that it will not be certified. Now, judges and others have weighed in, and they've appointed specific dates for certification of the results. But this is what they haven't undone. When the Georgia State Legislature passed to form this committee, they accompanied it with a set of provisions. One of those provisions was, you all heard a lot about it, you couldn't give anybody cold water if they was in a line getting ready to vote. What? If they had these long lines, you couldn't give anybody a chair, you couldn't help them. If they couldn't take it, if they couldn't take standing in line, they just had to leave and go home without exercising their franchise, the right to vote. So, they kept talking about not giving the water, but that was a bit of uh, prestidigitation. Prestidigitation is magic. It's sleight of hand. In other words, I'm going to do something over here so you won't see what I'm doing over there. They kept arguing about the water, but what people didn't pay attention to was the fact that under these new set of rules, this commission has a right to go into any county until the registrar and the board of elections of that county to go home and take over the count for that county. The fact that they could do that could then give them the excuse of, we have to take more time to do the count because we've got to stand up a crew. We've got to hire some people to do this. We've got to vet the people we hire to come in to replace the ones that we kicked out. And here's the cute part. If the results are not certified by about 30 days after the election, the votes become null and void. And the election of our people for the Electoral College goes where? Back to the state legislature, the Republican state legislature. Now, very few people can pay attention to all this stuff. But Annette asked about the hand count. And yes, and as a result of this commission, before any votes were cast and before the election date came, they had already set up that no matter how it was done, they were ordering prematurely a hand count of all the votes of the state of Georgia. Before they even voted. Not based on whether it's close or far apart. They're setting up to disallow the votes of the citizens of the state of Georgia if Donald Trump doesn't prevail. That's where we are, people. And yes, that is the design. It is not, it's not looking pretty. And yes, there are people in America who are ready to go to war if Donald Trump is not the president. Lastly, I want you to do this. Vote early, if at all possible. Get your vote in. That'll be less votes for us to have to count on election night. The earlier we get our results, the earlier the tension will go away. Now, with all the complaining that I'm doing, with all the precautions and cautionary tales I've told, I need you to understand I would not want to be anywhere else than in these United States. I still believe that this is the greatest hope of mankind, that it has the best chance for humans acting humanely in the history of mankind. Recently, we had Hurricane Helene go through Florida, then Georgia, then North Carolina and Tennessee. And one of the things I've seen about Americans is in trouble, we are better people. In trouble, we are better people. They have a group called the Cajun Navy, a bunch of good old boys with these big boats with fans on them that they use in the swamp. When there's trouble anywhere concerning floods and such, they get those big fan boats and haul them across the country, put them in overrun streams and lakes and rivers, and they go fetch folk. They go get anybody that's in trouble. They go get any human being that's in trouble. Now, most of them I would think would be voting for Trump, but not when they're rescuing human beings. In that sense, we are all in this together. And even if they are Republicans, under pressure, they become human. And I like that. God bless you, and God keep you, as always, is our prayer. On tomorrow morning at this time, we'll be coming back on to do our Sunday school, and our morning worship will be following at about 11:30. Again, our coverage is down in our broadcast station in Jessup as a result of the wind blowing over our tower, and so we shout outs to WTLD in its absence, WSLT, that where we're still on right now, and WKVQ. And we thank God for each and every one of you all. I'll pray our strength in the Lord as we will pray yours. Again, see you tomorrow morning, if you will. Be blessed.